Hey friends, what's up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Vav, Daf 56 of Masechta Ksubis, friends. Daf 56, there's 112 Daf in Masechta Ksubis, which makes 56, I believe. 50 times 2 is 100, 6 times 2 is 12. 112 divided by 2 is 56. Friends, there are people yelling outside. Why do you think they're yelling? Well, we probably shouldn't go there. Friends, today we talk about some interesting sugyas. We talk about, remember in the Mishnah it said that, it's come up a few times, about Rabbi Yehuda says that he can give the ksubah of, let's say, a basula masayim, and then she can write him a receipt that she received 100 of it, even though she didn't. So we're going to look into that sugya. It's kind of an interesting sugya about writing receipts on documents. Kind of interesting stuff, in my opinion, if you're into that stuff. And then we get up to other Tanai b'mamun. There's like some interesting stuff going on over here. So let's jump in. So we're on Daf Vav Amud Aleph. We made some headway already yesterday. So about 15 lines into the page, probably about 5-6 lines before it gets wide. So boy Ravin. So Ravin wants to know Nichnusa lechupa v'lo niva lamau. So, of course, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had said in the Mishnah that if they got engaged but they didn't yet get married, so her ksuba would only be the mana masayim, it would not be the tosefes. And he explains why. He says because he only added all those additional things with the intent of marrying her. So, and if they're only engaged, they're not married since she doesn't get the tosefes. But the question is, by Ravin, nichnasa lechupa v'lo nivala. What if they got married, but they never had bia yet, and then he dies or whatever? So chibas chupa kone or chibas bia kone? So we want to know, when he says that he's, when Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that he's adding all this stuff with the intention of getting married, is the intention of standing under the canopy with her, standing under the chuppah with her, or is it the intention of having bia with her? And then afkamin is, if it's nichnas al chuppah v'lo nivala, if they stood together under the chuppah but they didn't have bia. So Tashma, Kaminir Dutani Rav Yosef, that Rav Yosef taught Shlo Kosov La'ela al Chibas Laila Arishin. So Rav Yosef has another girsa, which is that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that if it's only after the engagement, if they're only engaged, so then she does not get the Tosefes, because he only wrote the additional stuff, the Tosefes, for Chibas Laila Arishin. The question is, what's Chibas Laila Arishin? Is Chibas Laila Arishin the chuppah, or is Chibas Laila Arishin bia? Yomet b'shlama Chibas chuppah kone. So I understand if it means that Chibas Laila Arishin is referring to the chuppah. Hanu dama Laila Arishin. That's why it says dafka the first night. You only have a chuppah the first night of your marriage. Eli yomet Chibas bia kone bia b'Laila Arishin isa mikan ve'elech leisa. But bia isn't only on the first night. It happens subsequently as well. So therefore, we want to say, based on the fact that Rav Yosef has a girsa that says Chibas Laila Arishin, that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that it only gets the mana masayim because the point of the Tosefes is for Chibas Laila Arishin. Chibas Laila Arishin must be the chuppah. Perfect Gemara. Velamai chuppah. What? So you think that Chibas Laila Arishin is referring to the chuppah? Chuppah balayli so b'yimam alesa. What, is chuppah only balayla Arishin? Is chuppah only at night? Well, you can't have a chuppah during the day. How do you know that Chibas Laila Arishin is a reference to the chuppah? Chuppah could be during the day as well. With a timer, to which the Gemara says, so what's the alternative? Bia. Bia balayla isa b'imam alesa. What, is bia only at night? Can't have bia during the day? Rava says that if they were in a dark house, even if it was during the day, you can have bia during the day as well. So we're trying to figure out, is Chibas Laila Arishin referring to chuppah or is referring to bia? We want to say that it's chuppah because it says the first night. That would be, right, the chuppah is only the first night. Bia is more than that. But then again we say, but chuppah could be during the day. It doesn't have to be at night. To which we say, but bia also doesn't have to be at night necessarily. It could be during the day. But lo kasha, the whole bia during the day thing isn't really relevant because orech ira kamash malon. When it says, you could argue that Chibas Laila Arishin is referring to bia, and it says night because it's teaching us derech eretz. The bia balayla, that you should have bia at night, that it's preferable to have bia at night. Elo, Chuppah kasha. But by chuppah, we have a question. How can we say that Chibas Laila Rishon is referring to chuppah? Because chuppah does not have to be during the night, it could be during the day. To which the Gemara says, well, chuppah nami, chuppah as well, lekasha kevin the stam chuppah lebia kaima, that since chuppah, ends, or is a sort of, the chuppah is not an end in its own right? A chuppah is, you get married, and then once you're married, you live together, and then you have bia. So, therefore, orach ayar kamashmal into belayla. So, that also should, I guess, preferably be at night. Interesting. Chuppah should preferably be at night, since chuppah is kilo, a stepping stone towards bia, and bia is at night. So, therefore, chuppah should be at night as well. Okay, so we could say that Chibas Laila Rishon is referring to chuppah, because chuppah should really be done at night, and also it's only the first night and not on subsequent nights. But Rav Ashi wants to know, Nichnas le chuppah ufer sanida mau. What if they went to the chuppah, but then she became a nida, and so they couldn't have bia. So even if you say that Chibas chuppah is kone, that the chuppah would be enough, but chuppah dechazi lebia, have a chuppah dechazi lebia lo. But still, does that chuppah have to be a chuppah that could result in bia? And if she's a nida, it cannot result in bia. Or maybe it doesn't matter. Take it. They say echveis nicht. Oh, so now we get into this sugya. I think it's an interesting sugya because it's a lomdisha sugya. You have to go. Is it this way or that way? You know what I mean? It's very interesting sugya. Very interesting sugya, in my opinion. You ready to jump into this very interesting sugya, in my opinion? So Rabbi Omer Ratza L'Kosav V'Sula V'Chulei. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? Rabbi Yehuda had said that the fellow can pull shtick. He could write to a Besula that her Ksubis is 200, and then have her immediately write a receipt to him that that she received 100 of it. Which means that if they get divorced, he only has to pay the what's the word I'm looking for? The balance. Is that the word I'm looking for? Maybe. That he only has to pay whatever hasn't yet been paid. And he's got a receipt that says he already paid 100 of it, so I guess he only has to pay the outstanding 100 of it. The Kosvin Shover? Oh, fact the Gemara. But is that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? Does Rabbi Yehuda believe in receipts? V'otnan, we learn in the Mishnah. Mishapara mixas chovo. Oh, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yachlif, Rabbi Yossi Omer Yichtov lo shover. His geschmack. Reuven lent Shimon $1,000. Givaldig. Shimon paid back Reuven 500 of it. Geschmack. So now what do you do? One option is Reuven writes Shimon a receipt that he received $500 of it, and then Shimon holds on to the receipt, and as long as he has this receipt, he can prove that he already paid 500 of it, and that he only owes another $500. That is one option. The downside to that option is that Shimon is responsible to make sure that the receipt, nothing happens to it, that mice don't come and eat it, that it's his responsibility to make sure he doesn't lose it, which is a little bit annoying. So there's a different option. So that's one option, is the receipt route. The other option is to tear up the first document and write a new document, this one for $500. And that way, Shimon doesn't need to hold on to anything. He doesn't need to get a receipt. Reuven has a new document, and this document says that Shimon owes him $500, and therefore maximum all Reuven can claim is $500, because that's the receipt, because that's what the document says. The first document was torn up. What's the downside of that? The timestamp on the document, right? The created at timestamp changes, and the nafkamina is if Reuven wants to, if Shimon's not paying and Reuven wants to go to the Kuchis, right, wants to go to Nechasim Shubadim, wants to, Levi, in the meantime, Shimon had sold land to Levi. Reuven wants to go to Levi and say, Levi, it's my land. Shimon owed me money before you bought it. But if you tear up the first document, so then Memele, you're going to have to write the date on the second document that the second document was written, which kind of makes it difficult for Reuven. It makes it harder potentially for Reuven to go back and collect Nechasim Mishubadim. Very geschmack. Very, very geschmack. So the Mishnah says, so when it comes to Mishapar Mikzas Chobo, so Reuven lent Shimon $1,000, Shimon paid back Reuven already $500. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yachlif. So Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is you do not write the receipt and make Shimon hold on to it and guard it and make sure nothing happens to it. No. Rabbi Yehuda says forget about the receipt, tear up the original document and replace it with a new document that says, somebody's yelling outside, that says, what is he yelling about? I wonder what inspired him to just yell, as well as every other time that he did that. What's happening in his life? That he's like, I know what the solution is. I'm going to yell. Don't they know I'm recording Babylon Talmud? So Rabbi Yehuda Omer Yachlef. So Rabbi Yehuda says, just swap it. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yichtov Lo Shover. Whereas Rabbi Yossi says, no, write a receipt, give it to Shimon, and Shimon's got to hold on to it. And Reuven could maintain his document that says that on whatever date he lent Shimon $1,000, it says that he lent him $1,000. Shimon's got to hold on to his receipt that he already received 500, that he already paid back 500 of it. And as long as Reuven holds that document for 1,000 and Shimon holds on to the receipt for 500, Lemaisa, he'll only have to pay the balance of 500. So therefore the shaila is, Rabbi Yehuda's opinion seems to be that we don't write receipts. So how come in our Mishnah he's saying that she writes him a receipt that he's already paid her half of the ksuba? I thought Rabbi Yehuda is not a receipt man. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Rabbi Yirmiyah kisha shovarta mitocho. So Rabbi Yirmiyah's answer is that no, Rabbi Yehuda is not actually saying that she should write him a separate receipt. She should write into the document, into the ksuba itself, and right, it should be written into the ksuba, and she has said that she's already received half of it. So the husband doesn't need to hold on to any kind of receipt. It's written in the ksuba itself that half of it has already been paid. So Rabbi Yehuda is not actually suggesting that she write him an actual receipt. Abaye Omer says, Abaye, afilu tema b'she'en shavarta mitocha. Whereas Abaye disagrees with Rabbi Yirmiyah, and he says, no, you can even say that it's a real receipt. She writes him a receipt, and he needs to hold on to it. But I thought Rabbi Yehuda is not into receipts. Well, we said, look, these two cases are very different. One is straight, one is crooked. In the case of Reuven lending Shimon $1,000 and Shimon factually paying back Reuven half of it, Shimon really paid him back half of it. And we want to sort of, we feel for the guy. We don't, if we can, it would be nice if we can avoid a situation where he has to hold on to a receipt. So in that case, Rabbi Yehuda says, look, let's just tear up the original one and write a new one for 500. That way we can help out Shimon a little bit. Dilma Mirkas Tavra, maybe something will happen to the receipt, Umapik le l'shtar, and then Reuven will take out the star that still says $1,000, V'adar gabe zimna achrina, right? Meaning if we make Shimon hold on to a receipt, maybe something could happen to the receipt, and then Reuven's going to come and claim $1,000 again. So therefore, we want to help out Shimon and say, look, just tear up the original document for $1,000. Reuven's not going to claim $1,000 again. He can maximum only claim 500. But over here in our case, by this husband who's making a strange arrangement where he writes 200, but then automatically gets a rebate for 100 of it. Vada yoivla. What? Did the husband actually pay her? No. She's just saying that she received it, probably on his insistence. Inatri natri lo natri you hu da'afsed anafshe. And Rabbi Yehuda is not so interested in okay, fine, so Reuven's got to hold on to it. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't really care that much. Okay, let Reuven hold on to it. It's not like he exactly paid her in the first place. So if she wants to write to him a receipt that she received half of it so that he doesn't have to pay the full amount in the future, let him hold on to the receipt. So I understand Abaye, why he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yirmiyah. That Rabbi Yirmiyah says that she writes it into the document itself. It's not a separate receipt. Lo katani shavarta mitocha. Well, the Mishnah doesn't say that they write a receipt into the ksuba itself. It doesn't say that. It says that she writes a receipt. So I can understand Abaye, who says that it's actually a separate receipt, and she gives it to him, and Rabbi Yehuda just isn't really going out of his way to help this guy who's like making a strange claim. Ella Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, it says Ella Rabbi Yirmiyah, my time lo Amar Abaye. Why doesn't Rabbi Yirmiyah say like Abaye? Why doesn't he say that it's an actual receipt? Because Rabbi Yirmiyah is concerned that if you write a receipt in this case, you might end up writing a receipt in the case where Shimon paid back Reuven, half of the loan, and in that case, Rabbi Yehuda would say that you don't write a receipt, that you tear up the document and write a new one. So therefore, Rabbi Yirmiyah doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to create a situation where we'd be saying that Rabbi Yehuda says that you actually write a receipt, because that isn't actually his opinion in general. His opinion in general is that there wouldn't be a receipt. So he wants to avoid a situation where we'd be saying that Rabbi Yehuda says that there's an actual receipt. So therefore, he says that you write it into the document itself. I thought that was an interesting sugya. What do you guys think? You think it was an interesting sugya? Alright. So now we get to another interesting sugya. Time of the kozvale aval al pelo. Oh, another geshmak sugya. Back to back geshmak. Back to back geshmak. So the Mishnah says that she dafka needs to write it out. She has to write to him that she received half of it. What if she just said that she received half of it? That doesn't seem to be acceptable. Because you can't make a t'nai, right? You can't be masna mashakosu b'torah, right? If it says that her Ksubis is 200, she can't just say, that it's only for 100. And that she received 100. No, she'd have to write that out. She can't just verbalize it. So time of the kozva, she has to write it lay aval al pelo, but not verbally. But why not? Davar shebimamenu. The ksube is a financial instrument. It's a financial document. V'shaminu le Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is the Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that when it comes to monetary stuff, you can make a t'nai. You can be masna mashakosu b'torah when it comes to monetary stuff. Ditnan, Ditanya, as we learn in a brayso, omer leisha. If a fellow says to a fellow, Harei ab mekudeshes li, you are betrothed to me, al menas, under the condition, she'ein lich olai sheksus va'ona, under the condition that the sort of requirements of sheksus va'ona, of food, clothing, and bia, don't apply. Right? So Rav Meir says the kiddushin counts, they're betrothed, but his t'nai, his stipulation of I'm not giving you sheksus and ona, is ridiculous. It's irrelevant. And they're engaged, and obviously he has to pay sheksus and ona. You can't be masna mashakosu b'torah, it's irrelevant, it's no bottle. Right? The Torah says that he's chayv sheksus v'ona. He can't just, make a t'nai that you can't say I'm marrying you, betrothing you under the condition that there's no sheksus v'ona. It's ridiculous. But Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, b'davar sheb'mamut n'akayim. He mentions sheksus v'ona. Food, clothing, and bia. Two of those things are monetary. Food and clothing. So, it says Rabbi Yehuda that his t'nai would apply to those. To financial things, to monetary things, the t'nai would apply. And therefore, so what do we see? So we see that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can be masne, amashakosu b'torah, you can make a t'nai against that which is written in the Torah when it comes to financial things, to mammon. So the question is, why does she need to write down that she received half of the ksuba already? Why can't she just verbalize it? And since it's financial, that should be enough. That should be fine. And for the Gemara of Rabbi Yehuda, Ksuba de Rabbanon. That Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that Ksuba is only midir Rabbanon. You hear that? And when it comes to dinim de Rabbanon, rabbinic things, they have to be more stringent than when it comes to the oraises. And therefore, even though Rabbi Yehuda says that by the oraises you can be masna mashakosu b'torah, and he could say, I'm not going to give you sharing ksus, and that's okay. But by dirabbanans, we have to, make it extra stringent to make sure you'll take them seriously. And therefore, by ksuba, which is dirabbanan, she's going to have to write it down. Right? She's going to have to write down that she received half of it. So, fine. Frekti Gemara, Are Peres the Rabbanon? 1 second. The Peres Nichse Malug. The property that she brings into the marriage, that she holds on to, that belongs to her, but that he could chaparain from the fruits of it, that's the Rabbanon. V'lo avdu l'Rabbanon chizik, and yet the Rabbanon did not make this extra stringency to say that you can't be masna mashakosu b'Torah, even when it's by Mammon. The Tanan is learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, le'olam hu ochel pere, the fellow can eat the fruits, right? What does Rashi say? Rashi says, in Kosev lo dain, the bottom Rashi on the page, if he writes here, dinu dvarim einli benichsech, I'm not going to chaparan, I'm not going to get anything from your property. He can eat the fruits. Where am I? He can eat the fruits. Wait, where am I? Lo'olam hu ochel pere peris. He could eat the fruits of the fruit, which means that if he doesn't eat the fruits themselves, but if he sells the fruits and then uses that money to buy stuff, that would be acceptable. Until he writes to her, until he writes that I'm not going to get any benefit from your property, from the fruits, or from the secondary fruits, right? That if he sells them, that profits he won't benefit from either ad olam forever, my kosev omer. And we say, what does it mean until he writes to her? It means until he says to her. So what do we see? So we see that by nichse malug, which is midar abanon, we're saying that he's allowed to verbally stipulate that he's not going to get any benefit from the peris, from the secondary fruits. So we see that sort of these verbal conditions do seem to be working by the rabbanons, and we don't say, well, they're more stringent and they don't allow verbal kind of things. Abaye says, Abaye, la kol yesh ksuba v'lo la kol yesh peris. He says, look, there's a difference between requiring her to write into the ksuba that she received half of it and not allowing her to verbalize that, and allowing him to verbalize about the peris of the nichse malug. And the difference is, everyone has a ksuba. Everyone who gets married has a ksuba. Not everybody who gets married, not every girl who gets married is bringing in nichse malug into the marriage. So you have a ksuba that everyone has, and you have nichse malug that some people have. Milsa de shchicha avdu bar rabbanon chizik, and things that are common, like a ksuba, the rabbis were particularly stringent and said you're going to have to write it down. Milsa de lo shchicha lo avdu bar rabbanon chizik, but things that are not common or less common, such as nichse malug, the rabbis didn't require him to write that down, and he can just verbalize that he doesn't want to get any benefit from the fruits or the fruits of the fruits. But 1 second. But what about the donkey drivers? The shchiche that they're common, and the rabbis didn't add any stringencies. The Tananis we learned in the Mishnah, Chamorin, the donkey drivers, that they entered into the city. We learned this. Where did we learn this? Andaf Chav Dalet. I remember I was in New Jersey when I learned this Mishnah. I remember I went. There's a funny little shul. I don't even know what to call it in New Jersey. I'm not exactly sure why I go there, but well, I know it's. I shouldn't say I go there. I end up there sometimes. This is when I'm in New Jersey. There's this place that I sometimes end up in, and that's where I was when I learned this. It was very nice. They gave me an aliyah. That's the truth. I told them they didn't have to. They said they wanted to. I said, okay, well, if you want to. It was very nice of them. They didn't need to. Anyways, so where were we? Oh, so I was in this place and I remember learning this Mishnah. So that the donkey driver is coming to the city. Man, and one of them said, Sheli Chodesh v'shechaver Yashon. One of them says, look, mine is new, my friend's is old. The older is better. Sheli einu mesukon v'shechaver mesukon. Mine isn't properly tied, my friend's is properly tied. Right? So he's basically talking down his stuff and talking up the other guy's stuff. Ein ne'emanim, the Chacham say that they're not believed, because we're concerned that maybe he's talking down his stuff and talking up the other guy's stuff, and they're going to go to the next place and they're going to do punkt vakert. The other guy's going to talk up, his stuff, whatever. They're going to flip roles. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ne'emanim, Rabbi Yehuda says that they are believed. So we see that when it comes to right, these donkey drivers, that it is common, and these people are Ama'aritzes. We're not exactly necessarily sure about like if they are separating mice or whatever, and still we're saying that Rabbi Yehuda says that we could trust him, that, and even though it's common and it's by Demai, which is Dirabanan, still we're saying that we're not making any kind of stringency. Rabbi Yehuda's not making any kind of stringencies. So Amar Abai says, Abai Badi did the very Avdu Rabbanan Chizik, say Savi did the very Avdu Rabbanan Chizik. So look, by Vadai, 100% certain situations the rabbis made chizik, such as a ksuba, but demai is kind of a suffix situation. Rava Amar b'demai kelu. Rava says that by demai we're lenient because Rava Amiaretz Ma'asunim, because at the end of the day, most Amaretzes separate Meiser anyways. Reb Meir Amar kol apoches v'chulei. Reb Meir says that anybody who does less than 200 or 100 respectively, it's be'ilas znus. So now Rashi points out, kol apoches afilu betna midilotana kol besula she'ein la masayim. Doesn't say any besula that doesn't get masayim, 200. V'amana she'ein la mana, and a mana who doesn't receive a mana. Harizo be'ilas znus, and it's be'ilas znus. Right? Shmamina da'achi hashmana she'aval pishu gover levasof, she'igover levasof, de'ein tno kayim. That its tanai actually doesn't work. So Rashi points out that Reb Meir isn't saying that she doesn't receive the 200. No, she's going to receive it, because he can't just make a stipulation. He can't just decide that she's going to get less. No. She gets the whole thing. But because he had initially told her that she wasn't going to get it, she assumed at the time that they had bia that she wasn't getting a ksuba, and therefore is bi'ila znus. So says the Gemara, even if it's a tanai, even if he says I'm going to give you less, and it doesn't work, and therefore she's going to get the whole thing anyways. Amaksaver tnao bottle v'isla. So we see that Reb Meir says that this tanai that I'm going to give you less is irrelevant and it doesn't work at all, and she's still going to get the full ksuba. V'chem de amarla leislich elamana, and since he said to her, you're only going to get a mana and not masayim, lo samcha daita v'havi la bilasu bilaznus. Then she, at the time that they're having bia, she's not assuming that she was, granted her proper ksuba, and the bi'ila is going to be considered znus. Vashamina le Reb Meir de Amar, but 1 second, isn't Reb Meir's opinion that kolamasna mashakasu b'Torah tno bottle, that anybody who makes a t'nai on that which is written in the Torah is t'nai is bottle, habidur t'nai tno kain, but by derabanan such as the ksuba, the t'nai would work, and therefore his he should be able to stipulate less than 200 for a besula or less than 100 for an amana. Because of Reb Meir ksuba doraisa, the Gemara says actually Reb Meir holds ksuba is midoraisa, not midirabanan, and that's why he says that the t'nai would not count. Tanya, we learn in the Brayso, Reb Meir Omer says, Reb Meir, kol apoches of besula mimasayim v'lamana mana. Anybody who stipulates for a besula less than 200 and for an amana less than 100, arezu bilas nus. This is bilas nus. It's inappropriate relationship. Rabbi Yossi Omer Rasha, Rabbi Yossi says he's allowed to stipulate less than 200 or 100. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Ratza kosev l'vsula shtasho masayim. Rabbi Yehuda says, look, if he wants to do less, he's got to write it down. The koseves lo is kabaltim im chamona, and she writes to him that she already received half of it. V'lamana mana, and he writes to Namana 100 zuz. The koseves lo is kabaltim im chachamishim zuz, and she writes to him that she's already received half of it. So we see a three-way machlokas that Reb Meir says you can't stipulate less than 200 or 100 respectively. Rabbi Yossi says you can, even verbally. Rabbi Yehuda says you can, but you'd have to write it down. It would have to be recorded. V'sav Rabbi Yossi Rasha, but does Rabbi Yossi really say that he'd be allowed to simply stipulate less than 200 or 100? We have a contradiction. In Osing Ksubas Isha Mitaltlin Pnei Tikkun Olam, that we don't make the Ksuba of a woman Mitaltlin. It has to be Karka. That way we don't have to worry about it getting lost or the value of the Mitaltlin, becoming more valuable or less valuable. Make it Karka, it'll always be there. and therefore, you don't have to worry about things like it getting lost or whatever. Amr Reb Yossi says, Reb Yossi, v'chima tikkun olam yesh bazo. What is the tikkun olam that we have here? V'alo ein ksuvin u'fochasin. The tikkun olam is that, because metatlin, they can go, their value can shift, they can go up, it can go down, and therefore to avoid that, just use property. Tanakama nami and osin kamer. So one second, isn't Reb Yossi and the Tanakama basically saying the same thing? Don't use metatlin. So this is what it's saying. What the Tanakama is saying is don't use metaltalin because they can get lost. But if you use mekabel achrayis, if he kind of added insurance for it, that even if it gets lost, there'll be backups. So then beseder, that's fine. Right? So meaning when there's no achrayis, so then you can't use metaltalin. But as long as he has insurance for it, so then you can use movable objects. It's fine because even if they get lost, there's insurance. The also Reb Yossi lemeimar, and comes Reb Yossi to say, Ki kibel olav achrayis amai osin. Reb Yossi says, I don't understand what insurance helps. V'alo ein ksuvin ufochasin. The issue isn't necessarily that they're going to get lost. The issue is that even if they are here intact, their value might go down. So hashta umaosim the dilma pachse chayish Reb Yossi. And now here's the kasha. The kasha is that Reb Yossi seems to be concerned that you can't use metaltalin because we're concerned that maybe it will go down in value. Here, where he's saying up front, he's saying, I'm giving you less. How could Reb Yossi possibly say that that's acceptable? When it comes to metaltalin, he says you can't use metaltalin even with insurance because maybe it will go down in value. Over here, he's definitely saying to her, I'm giving you less. And still Reb Yossi is saying that that's okay? Yeah, but there's a difference. Difference is, Reb Yossi says metaltalin is a problem because she doesn't know that it's going to go down in value, and she doesn't know to say that it's okay. She thinks she's getting the proper value of her ksuba. Whereas over here, she knows, right? He's telling her up front, I'm giving you less. And she says, okay, that's fine. So Rabbi Yossi would say that is okay. Friends, that was Daf Nun Vav, Masechta Ksubis. There was a lot of interesting stuff on Daf Nun Vav. In the beginning, we had some questions about Rabbi Elazar ben Azari's opinion about that the Tosefis is only for if they get married. So what's considered married? What if they didn't have bia? Fine, seder. But then we got to the shaila of, what was the first shaila that we had? The first shaila was the machlokas between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda about how to deal with a document that's been paid back half of it. Rabbi Yehuda says that we don't want the borrower to have to hold on to a receipt, so we say that you swap out the original document for a new document for half the amount. And Rabbi Yossi says no, he holds on to a receipt. And the question was that in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda, who seems to be saying by that document that you don't write a receipt, over here he's saying that she writes the husband a receipt that she receives a half of it. So Rabbi Yirmiyah had said, well, actually in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda is not saying that she writes him a receipt and gives it to him. She writes into the ksuba, right? Or they write into the ksuba. The sofer writes into the ksuba that already half of it has been paid, but he doesn't have to hold on to a receipt. Abaye says that no, actually in this case, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have a problem with her writing a receipt because over here he didn't actually pay it. When it comes to a borrower who actually, in fact, paid back half of it, so we want to help him out and, we don't want to make him hold on to his receipt. But over here, we're not necessarily going out of our way so that the husband who never actually paid half of it, doesn't have to hold on to a receipt that says that he paid even though he didn't. So, there Rabbi Yehuda is not super concerned. Then we had a kasha of like, okay, fine, but we're saying that she has to write it down. Why does she have to write it down? Doesn't Rabbi Yehuda say that you could just verbally make a condition around financial things? So we say enochinami, but this is midrabanan. Ksubis midrabanan, and by dinim derabanan, the rabbis were more stringent and said you can't verbally make a condition; you'd have to write it down. We asked different kashas about. We said, right, what about Paris Nechsei Malug? We said that's not common. So by common things, then the rabbis are more stringent. We asked about Demai. We said, well, that's a suffix, or they were made killed by Demai. So those were those kinds of things. We then saw that Rabbi Meir's opinion is that if he says that that her ksuba is less than 200 or 100 respectively, so then the Tanai is completely bottle. But 1 second, doesn't Reb Meir say that by dinim d'Rabbanan you could be masna mashakosav b'Torah? So he says that actually ksuba is the oraisa. Then we also saw the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, who says that you can stipulate less, even verbally, and Rabbi Yehuda, of course, says you have to write it down. Friends, that was the Nun Vav Masechta Ksubis. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.